What is going on, everyone? Today I just wanted to do a little bit of a how-to on how to fire a manual kiln with a kiln sitter. Specifically, today we're going to do a bisque fire. Got a lot of wear that's been sitting around for quite some time. I haven't done a fire in quite some time. So it's certainly time to get that done. So I'll be showing you guys the steps and what to do here, and I hope you learned something. So thanks for sticking around with me, and we'll look forward to getting this done together. So since we are using a kiln sitter, we will be using what are known as pyrometric cones. So we need to find one that is cone 06, which will suffice for our firing strategy today. As you can see, we got a cone here, cone 07, which melts at a lower temperature than cone 06, which melts at a lower temperature than cone 05. Because of that, what we'll notice is this one should bend over pretty evenly, this one should bend over just a little bit less, and this one should not bend over at all, ideally. So that's kind of what we're going for with our cones there. And then we'll have our cone 6 small cones. These actually go in what is called the kiln sitter. That's what actually is responsible for firing your kiln to temperature. So when you open them, they come like this, but this is just two of them together. So don't let that trick you or anything like that. I think I have some in here that are already broken apart. So see, we got one right here. It's already good to go, cone 06. So we're gonna go ahead and load this into the kiln sitter, and I'll show you guys how to do that. Just as an example of what we're going for here, this is the kind of meltage that we're looking to see, which is what brings something like this, which is just raw greenware, to something like this, which, as you can clearly see, is a much different color. This is fired bisqueware. So that's the kind of color difference that we'll get once we get to temperature. So naturally here, the first thing that we need to do is open our kiln to make sure we get everything set up. I don't have the most ideal setup down here because, as you'll see in a second, my kiln lid does brush up a little bit against my hood, which it's fine, it doesn't really mess anything up, but it's not ideal. Now there's a couple things to consider here. This is where we're actually going to put our cone, but before we even do that, I want to make sure it's clear that inside this cone, this kiln sitter here, there's a little bar. So as I move that, you can hear that there's something wiggling on the other side. So what that does is that affects this little hook here. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna hold this little weight here. So ideally what I'll do is I'll put the cone in the sitter after I hold this up. So let's try this out here. So sorry, I'm kind of using one hand. So okay, so now we have the weight held up, and as you'll be able to see over here, the sitter is being held up by my finger. So what we need to do is, as you can see, I just let go and it dropped the switch. That's how it gets to temp. So let me just grab my cone. For this particular kiln, some people say to have the bottom, the flat side up. For mine, this is to have the pointy side up. So that does actually make a difference for this particular situation. Now what you really want to try to do is you really want to try to make sure that you center it in there. You don't want to have it overheat. You don't want to have it under fire. Ideally, you want it to just reach cone 06. So once you have that in there, you are good to go. Make sure that your switch is good to go here. Now, what that means is we are ready to start filling our kiln. This is for sure going to be time-lapsed, but I still want to record it to give you guys a little insight on how I load my bisque kiln. So let's get right into it. All right, folks, so that took a little bit longer than expected. I didn't even get everything into the kiln that I wanted to get in. I'll take a second to show you here. So as you can see, I still have my ink wells and my test tiles to fire. I think honestly I'll just do a small firing for them on their own. But as you can see right now, we have a very fully loaded kiln. I wanted to try to do another shelf right here for all that stuff, but I showed you my little ruler trick to see if the shelf would fit, and the shelf was going to be crushing down on the mugs. So I'd rather just have one good solid bisque firing here. I'll glaze in the meantime with some of our already established combos that we have here. And then we'll do a solid bisque firing for just these pieces here. And then we'll do some more test glazes, because as you guys have seen from my previous videos, I got a ton of new glazes to try. So yeah, it is pretty late, but I think that starting a bisque fire now is going to be just fine. All this stuff should be pretty much totally dry. We got our sitter loaded up. It's important to note that you don't want to crowd it to cause too much heat to pile up right there. Nervous about these big old bongs here, pretty thick on the bottom. I did trim a lot off, but it takes a long time for stuff like that to dry. It's been about a month though. So we're gonna put the lid down and we're gonna kick it off. So let's do that. First thing we'll do is put the lid down. Sorry about that. So now we have our lid closed, got the kiln loaded. Now we do our timer. I set it for about 8 hours. We start it all on low, 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 except for this one we start on medium, because I've noticed it does take a little bit longer for this ring to get to temp, and this area up here has a lot more elements to do to get the temp with. So we got that. The last thing we do here is we have a little button to press, which indicates that the kiln is on. So yep. All right, so now the last thing that we need to do is we will be bringing down our hood so it's nice and even with the top of the kiln. You want to make sure there's about 2 to 4 inches of clearance there. And then we'll just turn on the vent. Mine's an older model of a Ventikiln. I like the Ventikiln a little bit better than the EnviroVent. Ventikiln goes on top. It's a hood vent. EnviroKiln goes through the bottom. And what that is, that's a it's a vent too, but I prefer this type of style. It's a little bit easier, and you don't have to drill any holes or anything like that. So what we'll do now is we'll make sure our peepholes are nice and pushed in. Make sure everything low, medium. And what we'll do is we'll write this down. So that's pretty much it. As you guys can see, there's not much to a manual kiln firing for a bisque fire. It is a little nerve-wracking when you're stacking your stuff in there. Things can be stacked on top of each other because there's no glaze to fuse anything together. But yeah, hopefully we end up with something like this once we get to glazing, which we will certainly be doing a lot of this coming week. So thanks for sticking around, and we'll catch you in the morning when we open the kiln. Naturally, the first thing we gotta do is turn this off. It does get a little warm, but all right, folks. Let's see what we ended up with here. Everything looks pretty good. I think what I'm going to do here is just really quickly unload the kiln and see what's going on. blowout. Look at that. Totally fucked. That's incredible. I've never had something blow up like that in the kiln. Pretty thick clay. I let it dry for about a month, and we still had a total fucking blowout. That's crazy. Because we did have a major blowout. Not much to discuss here. Well, there's not much to discuss here, but we got about 43 tankards, 2 ring bottles. Started with 3 massive bongs and 2 little ones. The cool one survived, and the 2 little ones survived. We also got our little pipes right here. Those turned out pretty cool. And then, unfortunately, while this one survived, we lost our little logo. So what I'm gonna do is see if I can knock that off and maybe still salvage the piece. And then we had our absolute total blowout over here. Had to vacuum the kiln because of that one. Always make sure that you fire nice and slow, guys. This didn't even get up to the temperature we needed it to. Ideally, instead of starting it at low, medium, should have started it at low, left it there for about 2 hours, moved it up to low, medium, left it there for about an hour, and then left it on medium, high for probably like 2 to 2.5 hours so that the bottom got nice and to temp, because a lot of this is a little bit under fired, but for biscuits not a huge problem. But when it is glazeware, it is a way bigger problem. So we'll fire this tomorrow, but I think overall, despite losing 2 of our bongs, I think we did pretty good. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope maybe you learned something. I hope maybe you got a little insight into my process as far as bisking is concerned. I'm still learning. This wasn't a super successful firing. We did get some bisque wear, but the temperature range didn't really get to where we needed, a little under fired, but ultimately we came out clean. So I hope you guys follow along, because we're going to do some glazing here in the next few days, and in the next couple weeks, probably a glaze fire. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.